Hey, Peter, you might want to wrap this up, bud. You might want to steal a death card or something. Get out of here for a while. It's getting a little hot.
What, Neelix got that cheese thing going again?
Fortunately, no, but there are literally 29th century space-time cops looking for you.
Me? Why?
I don't know the whole story. I was just hanging out down in the mess hall. Tom had convinced everybody to try out some new 20th century bullshit fad he found. Something called Hungry Hungry Hippos. A lot of plastic and slapping. Doesn't matter. Anyway, all of a sudden, 7 of 9 comes in, but 7 of 9 was already there.
Ooh, two sevens?
I know, right?
Nice. Move over Chapman.
Got him. Anyway, she starts this low energy phaser fight like she was in engineering or something. And after the dust settled from that, some other dudes in some weird-looking Neelix-inspired Discount African King uniforms showed up, said they were from the 29th century, and they needed to find you because you murdered a guy.
Murdering sounds like outside of anything I would ever do because I'm Starfleet and we don't murder people. And second of all, even if I did murder somebody, why would Timecops care?
This doesn't sound like you, but you start a phaser fight in engineering and hit the warp core, and it causes some kind of sort of space-time butthole to occur, and an inversion in the entire sector are going out 15 light years, and some guy named Berlinghoff Rasmussen apparently, told on you.
What?
Yeah, it sounds wild. I don't know how it possibly be that you would be involved.
You sure these are time cops and not like alternate dimension mirror universe cops? Like, this seems really far-fetched, even for Voyager.
They're not doing enough villainous sneering. They also have tricorders, but they're smaller.
Well, I don't know, man. This all sounds like a bunch of bullshit to me. Hey, I'm gonna go grab a creamsicle. You want one?
Oh, you mean the creamsicles that you had in that cabinet over there?
Yeah.
I kind of ate the last 4.
You son of a bitch!
Wait, no, Peter, put the phaser down. Get your tenses straight, because it's Voyager, please. A hateful voyage through the Delta Quadrant. My name is Joseph.
And I'm your executive officer looking for an easy promotion path, Peter.
I would like to jump right into talking about this episode this week, because after 2 weeks of what we had to endure with someone to watch over me in 11:59, I was really looking forward to getting something good, and I knew this would fit the bill. What did we watch?
Season 5, episode 24. Relativity.
It's not a perfect episode. There's some pretty laughable sort of mistakes and oddball moments that make it all the more interesting to talk about for you and me. But at the same time, this is also one of the better kind of just cheesy sci-fi, self-referential, solid Voyager episodes, I think, throughout the entire run. And one I've enjoyed rewatching over the years.
I loved it. We got Brian Fuller, we got Nick Sagan, Mike Taylor, story by Nick Sagan, Alan Eastman directing it. I don't know who he is. Bran Braddow was pretty involved in the writing on this, and it is a great combination of rad shit, as you put it at the end of our last episode, and I will fully agree with the term rad. It's humorous. It's a lighthearted episode that still does a lot of really cool stuff and some really solid world building. And for time travel, which has been a huge problem with Voyager as far as telling turkey stories time and again, starting us off on the wrong foot, I think this does some amazing things.
You do realize that one of the time travel incidents that I referenced in this episode is time and again.
No, it's timeless.
Oh, it is?
That's what Memory Alpha says. Memory Alpha says Future's End, timeless, and then the third they don't really disclose, but it could be Year of Hell or Endgame, and I'm just thrilled now to know that there's time travel involved in Endgame, which of course there is. It wouldn't be Voyager without it. But that was kind of my question going through this whole thing is where were they during some of the very serious time travel situations, specifically Timeless, specifically Year of Hell? And, we can assume, I think, that they were working behind the scenes, handling stuff.
The fun part of the episode is that we get insight into what the Timecop 29th Century Federation is doing, but they don't tell you too much, right? You just see enough. They don't over explain. And particularly Janeway is just like, I don't understand what you're doing and I just don't want to be part of this. Sounds great. Look at what I just want to go home. I don't no, I don't want blah blah blah, I don't want to hear you. Like that part, all of that is just, as I said, rad shit. It's fun. It's fun times.
So it's been a while since we've had an actual episode really worth discussing, and I'd like to stick to the traditional format of us going blow by blow on the plot. But before we start, so we get introduced heavily to the Federation Timecop Society with the Temporal Prime Directives, and we had a taste of this organization earlier in Future's End, which we had just talked about laughably last episode. But in that, it was just Braxton and just a little one-man fighter pilot, which, oh gosh, what's his name? Ed Begley Jr.
Oh, yeah. Evil Steve Jobs.
Ransacks, and here it's a much more fleshed out view. You've made mention before that Enterprise goes pretty hot and heavy on this stuff, right?
Yeah, so a major plot point for the first 3 of the 4 seasons of Enterprise, the through line is that the events of Enterprise, and this isn't really a spoiler because it's literally in the pilot, is that their actions are part of a greater temporal Cold War. And the 29th Century Federation is essentially the good guys in the temporal Cold War, and they interact with what Enterprise is doing to try and prevent other actors from fucking it up.
This isn't just a one-off thing, because part of my watching this and knowing how things are going to pan out, and of course, if there's one thing Star Trek is quick to do, it's to take its own established canon and throw it in the fucking trash, so you can do whatever one-off episode you want to do this season. But my feeling kind of going through all the stuff with Braxton, what we've seen here, is like it's very possible that none of this stuff, the Temporal Federation, ever even comes to exist, because it just takes a couple key actions at the right time to radically alter a timeline. And these situations are easy enough to kind of just hand wave away and say, well, maybe they're encountering them now, and maybe by the end of Voyager something else will happen that none of these guys will ever come to be in the first place.
That is not the case. The 29th Century Timecop Federation continues into the next show. It's definitely a thing that they decide that they want to go back to. This is the fun one, though, and it's, I think, the fun one because you get so much cool just background shit. Like the teaser, right? The pre-credits sequence is Voyager at Utopia Planitia, and this is the first time ever in Trek you actually get to see Utopia Planitia.
Fucking amazing. And I played the game where I paused it as soon as I saw the first thing, and I was like, if that's not the upper primary hull of a Galaxy class starship, then I don't know what it is. This is such a standout episode as they pan over a Galaxy class being built. You see an Excelsior in dry dock. You see a Nebula. You see an Akira rolling fresh off the line. Like, this is major shit. There's Galaxy classes being constructed all over the place. And it's just an awesome scene that is so above and beyond a majority of the special effects in composition and quality that it sticks out like a sore thumb. And did you read the Memory Alpha fully on this?
I did for this specific part because I thought that shot was so cool, and I was like, there's got to be some background to this. And I was not at all surprised that this was the work of like a hardcore Trek nerd who really just wanted to flesh this scene out super hard, up to and including that the shot of Mars in the background is apparently the Utopia Planitia crater, thus
Not
giving it its name.
not a the work of a nerd, of nerds. These guys who did the shot were doing this on their own personal time, off budget. And not only the regular, Voyager special effects people that were contracted, like other people from the design company were putting in time to make this as badass as it was. Like this is like a fandom labor of love, and it shows.
And it's all for probably 5 seconds, but it's a great 5 seconds.
It was about 5 minutes with the way I was stopping, rewinding, stopping, rewinding.
We
Like
got 5 minutes of joy, yeah.
I felt like it was Under Siege, where the Playboy model pops out of the cake naked, and like I just rewound it and watched it a million times as a child, and that's what I was doing here. If this was the VHS, that part of the tape would be forever warped right now. And you don't know what's going on exactly until you see that shot of Voyager, and you realize that this is not the current day. This is 5 years prior, and this is Voyager about to launch out. And what I love the most about this episode, and again, for a jokey kind of a fun action episode, is they lay so much cool background down, and you never get to see Voyager with new crew members. You never get to see other big names just because of the distance they are. It's a static environment, right? So seeing an admiral on deck, seeing Janeway beam over for the first time and him give her a hard time, seeing Janeway with her old season 1 hairdo, which looks
Yes.
fucking terrible.
Because it's just a wig, right? Like, I mean, I'm sure it was a combo of a wig plus her own hair in the original, season 1. Now it's a straight up wig, and it's very noticeable.
It is terrible, but she beams on, and kind of like that was the neat part for me in All Good Things, was seeing what was it like when Picard actually first stepped foot on the Enterprise, and what was the reaction to seeing the ship for the first time. And it's just really, really cool world building, and I think they do a great job having fun doing it, but really, really establishing it well in the process. The Admiral, which we just mentioned, that greets her is Admiral Patterson, who has been supervising the construction of Voyager, and he is in fact Janeway's old, I don't know, space algebra teacher or something from the academy.
Yes, some kind of space science teacher from back in the academy days. But he is very warm and personal with Janeway in a sort of very fatherly way.
This guy's Dakin Matthews, who's a total that guy. I recognize him strongly from True Grit, but like anytime you need like a soft-spoken Southern scholar, Dakin's your guy, and I think he fills this role nicely.
This episode's got a lot of that guy energy going for it.
Boy, howdy.
I'm sure we'll get to that, but the teaser kind of plays it straight up until the very end. It's Catherine Janeway getting her first tour of her command. Admiral Patterson's kind of taking him through the basics. She gets to go to the bridge. She checks out her ready room. She comes back to the bridge, and she wants to take a look at the helm. Asks an ensign in a blue uniform to step aside for a second, and she does, and turns the camera, and we see it is a completely normal looking, like ensign looking human in a Starfleet uniform, 7 of 9.
Wow, who would have ever thought that they would live to see the day that Jerry Ryan is not in a skin-tight catsuit? I've been waiting for this so long, asking so many times, when are we going to see her? When are they going to finally put her in a Starfleet uniform? And here you got it, Joe. The proof is in the pudding. Plain as day on screen. If Jerry Ryan can't make one of these goddamn DS9 Voyager uniforms look good, that's the word of God right there. These are ugly uniforms, and even supermodel Barbie can't look respectable in it.
I thought she looked sharp in it, man. They obviously fitted her into a jumpsuit. Like, they did not give her a
She
jabroni
looked
suit.
Okay in it, but it still did not look okay on her. They're bad uniforms.
Okay, fair point. Fair point. Um, so it's our first indication that something is obviously up with what's going on here. And she's got some kind of future tech looking device in her hand when we cut
Super
back.
tricorder, yeah.
And she's in the briefing room when Janeway comes in and is kind of bitching that Starfleet briefing rooms always kind of suck. And asks Seven of Nine, like, hey, do you think this sucks? And she's like, it's fine.
When they first showed her, I want to say real quick, because planting her back in time actually kind of surprised me. I figured, like you were saying, this was just going to be a straight cold open. We were going to see some fundamental flaw in the ship's kind of creation or whatever. When they showed her from the back and it was just a super blonde lady in a science division outfit, I at first thought it was Jerry Ryan's stunt double who they killed in the Space Elf pharmaceutical testing episode.
Right.
That was actually the secret Section 31 plant. So having her in there was kind of like just got me, knocked me off, caught me flat-footed. And then, yeah, they roll in, they start kind of ribbing the briefing room. I noticed there's some ugly ass artwork that we had commented on seasons ago that is suspiciously absent. So, they put a solid effort in, but they didn't say super duper true to what the original season 1 looked like.
Yeah, they were gonna. They would go ahead and put a slap a bad wig on Kate Mulgrew. They're not gonna redo their entire set just for those details.
And speaking of looking rough, Joe Carey.
So we have now. This is the first time that Joe Carey has been on screen in 4 years.
Like, the last time we saw him in real.
It was season 1, bro. It was that episode where I think they're on some planet where he's like trying to find roots to eat, and then like Snarf tells him that he'll like shit his brains out if he eats them.
Points at his dick too, right?
Yeah, like it's just his dick will fall off or something. Like it was awful.
State of flux. That was a state of flux. State of flux. That's the episode where there's a replicator incident and the Kazon get melted into the bulkhead.
Oh yeah, that's the one where Seska actually like finally
bounces out,
goes rogue completely.
Oh man, Seska, Queen of Burns, how I've missed her.
So that was episode 10 of the whole show.
Yeah,
we're in episode 116, and here's Joe Carey. What the fuck? Reaching in the
Joe,
back
what have you been
catalog.
up to? Or whatever his real name is, but like, hey man, what have you been up to? Nothing. Well, we need you. We got you on the casting call for what? What do you mean the casting call? Well, yeah, man, you signed that contract. You still gotta come in and act. I haven't been on that show in 4 years. Well, tough shit, man. You got to come back in.
And what gets me is that he's here to hit on 7 of 9. Like that seems to be it. This is a married man, by the way. Shame on you, Joe Carey.
Yes. He will not take no for an answer. It's, you want to catch food with me at the mess hall? No, I'm not part of this ship's complement. I'm on that starbase. Okay, well, I'm going to come by the starbase and say hi. Like, down, boy. Jesus. Like,
going for it, Joe Carey.
Yeah, go hang out with your boys, man. Like, get that family time in while you can, because I got bad news for you.
So 7 of 9 manages to excuse herself from Joe Carey hitting on her.
Still wearing super high heels. Only crew member. Even with the Starfleet uniform, she's still got her Borg hooker boots. And I'm not complaining, but I'm
just putting
observing.
It out. You're just observing. No,
maybe that's what drew Joe to her. Joe's got a boot thing too, and he's like, hey.
You share a fetish with Joe Carey.
Yeah.
Is that what you want to tell the world?
I notice you're not wearing the Federation issue spray painted black Air Jordans. What are you doing later tonight?
7 of 9 enters into a Jeffries tube, and she is talking to somebody about some kind of weapon that she is finding. And what we find out is that she is corresponding with what appears to be a very more futuristic looking starship that looks vaguely like it's probably Federation, but definitely not what we understand to be Federation.
I thought it looked more like I actually had a GI Joe playset when I was little. It was a stealth bomber, but it looked like the ship. The ship looks kind of like Space Dinosaur to me, if anything.
It does share, well, the Space Dinosaurs I think was a little bit more metal tubey. This has got that Holiday Inn carpeting of starship
Oh,
construction.
on the inside, yeah, I'm talking about the outside.
Yeah, the outside is a little bit more like that, but it also has like the blue highlights that always kind of scream Federation, right? Like it has there's a certain sort of design aesthetic that it's different because it's kind of more sleek. It's not real circular, but I still think it kind of tags back as like Federation esque.
That bridge you're talking about, I couldn't believe that is a redressed Enterprise E movie set.
And
But
they managed to make that look so much worse.
yes, terrible. And
I was
speaking of
like,
terrible, future 29th century Federation uniforms still look terrible.
apparently they found some of Neelix's old design docs. I'm just straight up like the patterns on it and everything.
It looks like American Gladiator outfits almost, or like Running Man. I don't know, the quilted sleeve.
So Seven of Nine has been kind of found out because she locked the Jeffries tube behind her. So Janeway and Patterson get interested in what's going on, try and find their way to her. She finds out, oh, I'm about to get found out. Get me out of here. And the officers who have not been identified yet on the ship, they say, well, if we try to get her out now, she might die. But they try to do it anyway before she gets discovered by Janeway. They time transport her, and when she materializes, in fact, she's dead. Janeway notices this part is important, a chronoton flux of 0.003.
Very specific.
Very specific recurring element. So the first part of the episode ends with like she's dead, Jim, as a beautiful in death Seven of Nine lays upon the transporter pad, apparently of having a time aneurysm.
We get to see the crew of what we'll find out is the USS Relativity. You've got Commander Doesn't Matter, and then you have Captain That Guy. This is both very exciting and also a huge miss because the captain is Braxton. And we have gotten 2 scoops of Braxton already in Future Zen Part 1 and 2. You and I have dubbed him Captain Caveman because he has a very pronounced bridge line or eyebrow ridge.
Mm-hmm.
And that is totally not this guy at all because they have recast this to Bruce McGill, who is one of the top that guys.
He is the most that guy of that guys. Like, he is someone you have seen in things. If you don't know you haven't seen him in things, we have a demo reel to show you. He is in all the things.
Most fittingly is actually Timecop.
Yes!
He's Jean-Claude Van Damme's Timecop boss, Chief Timecop.
Yes, he is the hard-bitten Timecop captain in that as well.
I'm sitting there, and as soon as I see him, I'm like, God, I've seen this guy in so many different things, and I'm really trying to place him. And of course, I knew him from Timecop, but the one that's really the big standout for me, and I want to jump back to Hope and Fear, Arturus, Ray Wise. We made a big deal out of Ray Wise when they got him. And I think it was that episode I discussed a little gem that I had come across called FDR, American Badass.
Yes, which I looked up afterwards, by the way.
Looked really cool in the previews, and I watched about 15 minutes of it, and it was just absurd and fun. And then I tried to watch the whole thing. Joe, I'm officially rescinding my endorsement of FDR, American Badass.
Oh, no.
It's...
Oh, boy.
It gets real bad in some real awful ways. And unfortunately, Bruce McGill, our time cop, is like a major player in that. He plays a guy named Lewis, and it's like the whole time he's talking, that's all I'm seeing is him like chastising FDR for taking his dick out and like.
You mean to tell me that both Ray Wise and Bruce McGill were in that same fucking terrible movie? What a fucking curse! What a curse!
It must have been a rough year for that guys.
That guy economy was in a recession.
Yeah, 2012 mistakes were made, Joe.
What, 2012? Really? Bruce McGill was in Lincoln that year. He was in like one of the best movies that year. So 2012 was the year Bruce McGill played Edwin Stanton in Lincoln, a Academy Award-winning film that was so good the lead actor decided he was never going to act ever again because he can't top it. And FDR, American Badass.
Someone blackmailed him. I don't know what to tell you.
That's the fucking revelation of the night. That's great.
Maybe Ray Wise called in a Boone and was like, "Listen, man,
listen, buddy, you don't have a fucking choice."
Yeah, you and I go way back to season 4, season 5 Voyager era. Anyways, they changed the actor, and I don't remember what the original Captain Braxton was, but it was just it was such a miss. Like, why change who this guy is? I don't know. Maybe the original guy died. Who knows? I'm not willing to put that much research in. But yeah, you get 2 pretty good guest actors between him and Dak and Matthews. Like, and that's fun. And they're just regular old humans without, a bunch of ball sacky makeup on them, and they really get to ham it up. But Bruce McGill's really reeled in tight there, and even to the point where it doesn't even feel at all. It doesn't look like the old Captain Braxton, and it doesn't sound like him. It doesn't feel like him. Doesn't look like him. It's a completely different character. But he is all full of throwbacks to Future's End Part 1 and 2. And he'll go on later in the episode to cry about how he got stranded in the 90s and how bad it was, and oh god, the horror, and he had to go off to like reprogramming boot camp, whatever the hell's going on there.
He had to go through therapy, basically. He had to be D9-defied before they let him back in charge of another Federation time ship.
Yeah. Which also seems like he got a pretty big promotion too, because before he's just like in the solo flyer, and now he's in control of a entire whatever class ship the Relativity is. It seems like it's a pretty big deal. And he's real cold on what's going on here. He's got a job to do. He doesn't care that 7 of 9 is getting mangled in the process. And apparently you only get to make 3 magic time travel wishes before you start running into the situation where additional time jumps, quantum leaps, might kill you. And he's like, oh, well, hopefully third time's going to be a charm. Lay in a course. Let's go back in time and snag 7 and 9 again, because the parameters of their mission, they have decided that grabbing a native out of the timeline they're trying to affect to do their not their dirty work, but to do the boots on the ground work is more efficient than taking one of their own people and planting them into the situation.
Oh, I mean, in addition, they make note of the fact that because of 7 of 9's Borg integrated hardware, she apparently has the capacity to natively sense the time bomb, which will ultimately be the MacGuffin. So there is a technical issue. A suggestion too is to
it's enough. I buy it.
Yeah, I do want to take a second to kind of unpack some of the time travel stuff that you just kind of explained. The first is Braxton himself, who says he essentially remembers being stuck in the 90s, even though there was a suggestion at the end of Future's End Part 2 that he never experienced that timeline.
Not a suggestion. I mean, they flat out say that.
But apparently, what this episode sets up but never actually says specifically is that because of the nature of time paradoxes, that when they reintegrate people into their time, into the correct timeline, they end up experiencing those things. So though the version of Braxton that they encountered at the end of Futures End Part 2 had never experienced that timeline, there was still a version of Braxton stuck in the 90s because he was still there because all of that still happened. It just was the disaster at the end didn't happen, right?
You know, one of the biggest complaints I and you have made about time travel, not just in Star Trek but anywhere, is it's fucking stupid. It's full of plot holes, and it's so easy to kind of trip on itself on its own bullshit that it takes you out of it. I think that this episode, much like Year of Hell, does a great job of just skimming past it and putting enough information out there that you can decide, well, maybe there's a legit reason why it is, but they're not trying to sit down and nail down every inch of the science behind it, and in the process make it seem ridiculous.
Yeah, the 29th century people take the piss out of time travel. Like they're the ones who are kind of like flippant about it in a way that kind of sells the whole thing. Well, when Braxton says like the bomb, has been and will be placed here, and he's just like, I don't keep my tenses straight anymore. It's stupid, right? Like who? And they like have the whole briefing moment where they're like trying to teach time paradoxes to Seven of Nine, just to show like this shit is all kind of fucked up and never makes sense. And the episode's acknowledging that. So does it make sense on the surface that Braxton did and did not experience those things? No, but at the same time, the show's saying, yeah, it doesn't make sense, but it still happened because time travel fucks everything up. And that's what's cool about it. Is they tell you that, and so you can be like, okay, cool. As long as you're saying that's the case, I can buy that's the case,
Yep, absolutely.
I like the idea that going back into time has some sort of consequence for you physiologically, so you can't keep fucking with time. Like there's a limited window of how you can fix it. They keep recruiting Seven of Nine, but they're like, okay, so we only have so many chances to do this because of that. And it's implied because she keeps going back in her own time frame that's a limiting factor. And the more you do it, the more likely it is that you're going to come down with this case of space madness.
Yep.
Like, great. That's great because that provides a frame for why you can't just do this over and over and over and over again until you succeed, right?
It creates stakes.
It does.
And puts a sense of urgency that a single episode needs, whereas the Krenim time vessel, as Space Boddicker laid out, said we can do this as many times as we want until we get it right because we're not getting old, and that was kind of like the horror of that episode. And this one, it keeps its levity, I think, and tells a different kind of time travel. So, they're, like you said, they're real flippant about it. Guys like, oh yeah, I always forget that you asked this question. And they're playing that like, oh, we're old chums, and I've got history with you, but this is the first time you're meeting me, and they kind of lording it over her. I appreciate that Seven of Nine doesn't really put up any resistance. She's like, that's a cool thing about her character. She's so business all the time that even in a kind of a muddy situation, she'll see what is the ultimate truth, what are the ends, and can she justify them with the means and just push forward on it.
I agree. So before they actually go get Seven of Nine, they set up the issue on Voyager in pretty quick succession. It's a normal sort of day on Voyager because, of course, Tom Paris is going to get everyone to do some bullshit from the 20th century. In this case, ping pong. Seven of Nine is having some issues with her ocular implant that the doctor fixes, and ultimately they cut to the ping pong tournament, the big ping pong tournament in the mess hall, and it's Seven and Tom versus Harry and B'Elanna.
What happened there? What kind of cuckolding is afoot here that you've got Tom having to go to Seven and basically try to like reverse psychology her into that? The only reason that Seven of Nine is there is because Tom's goading her with this rivalry she has with B'Elanna. And I would totally be like, no fucking way we're letting the Borg in here with her perfect hand-eye coordination. Like, it's cheating. You're using a stroke bot. Get the fuck out of here. They need
hacks. This is hacks.
Yeah, like Neelix needs to have a copy of Punkbuster installed on that.
It makes sense because B'Elanna and Harry are old friends, like from the first episode. So like they decide they want to do this and hang out. Like,
but it's Tom's gimmick. It's Tom's tournament. His girlfriend and his best friend decided that they are going to pair together for doubles and oust him. Like there's a story to be told here as to how this happened, and if it wasn't such an action-packed, fun adventure otherwise, I'd argue they should have made it a bigger point. But there's Tom and Seven on one side, B'Elanna and Harry on the other, and there's a pretty cool moment where like they get a good exchange. Tom goes to spike the ball, and it just hangs in the air, and everybody's like, "Whoa!" And I'm like, "This is totally a Starfleet moment. Like we're just hanging out, having fun, and then like the space horror starts to unfold, and now what was just having fun in R&R has turned into like a work red alert."
So they do some investigating. There's a quick scene in Astrometrics where there's apparently temporal fissures opening across the ship, and it's going to eventually rip the ship apart unless they're able to get to the bottom as to why this is happening. And there's even a quick scene where the doctor gets a call that someone's ill and then goes to sickbay before the person gets ill because time is flowing at different speeds in different parts of the ship.
Fucking cool. That was such a cool scene. It was such a simple scene. And again, the horrors of space, I loved it. And that's a great, like, kind of Event Horizon-y, oh, what the fuck's going on here moment. I want to point out here, they go close up as the doctor's leaving sickbay to go to the mess hall and deal with whoever's space sickness up there. The camera pans down, specifically focusing on his hollow emitter, which is what? Stolen 29th century hyper technology.
And make you think that it's going to be about that, and then it's not.
Because we've talked about this like 15 times now. There's just this amazing piece of technology floating about. And here you've got a whole episode of a Federation 29th century Captain Braxton specifically, who's got an axe to grind with Voyager and knows all about the stuff, just turning this blind eye to the doctor's hollow emitter because, we're not going to stick Bob Picardo back in sickbay forever. So, but it's just crazy.
He's too good an actor to keep in sickbay. But yeah, they tease you super hard with that pan-in shot that seems to exist for no other reason than to make you think about it. Like, no other.
As much good special effects is in this episode, the scene with Chakotay talking to the captain, and she's like, "I've got some idea about some super duper force fields," and then he kind of falls out of phase with himself, and like, I don't know, the only way I can describe the effect they use on him is like when you win solitaire and like all the cards go shooting off and he's like trailing himself.
Yeah.
Not their best moment.
In any case, the action on Voyager actually wraps up really quick after that. I mean, literally, they get the red alert that the ship's about to break apart, and then it breaks apart. The XO of Relativity shows up with another 29th century time cop and grabs 7 of 9, and that's when they winds up back on Relativity, and she gets the down low of what's going on with Braxton. So,
if this wasn't such an awesome episode, I'd really nitpick it, but the fucking bomb, the big thing that happens here is like, it's the stupidest concept ever. Like, if you are going to try to blow up a Voyager, why using some slow release time bomb? Like, you could have just thrown a grenade at the warp core and...
Well, so they start to talk about it in one line of dialogue, but don't pay off how that device was going to do that. But what Braxton... So, okay, here it is. Here's the sound effect. I'm going to put it in right here. Okay, the bad guy is Braxton, but it's a future version of Braxton. Okay, and the future version of Braxton wants to erase Voyager from time and space because his rationale is that his life won't be ruined if Voyager never existed because his life got ruined by being stuck in the 20th century for 30 years.
Legit complaint.
Legit. So Braxton is trying to erase Voyager from history, and apparently what the bomb is supposed to do. But that is the only time that's like that connection is made in the story, and it's kind of the only part that falls on its face, right? Like,
Because if they do blow it up, then they wouldn't be trying to save it because it would have never existed in the first place.
and there could be like some kind of technobabble thing of, oh, so the effect takes time, and like we have temporal shielding so that we can still
He
perceive
got
the
the cheap
timeline.
Chinese knockoff that doesn't
Right.
work as good as the regular,
So we still
OEM
have a
version.
certain amount of time to try and fix this before the effect becomes permanent. Like we're talking maybe 20 seconds of dialogue to clean this up so that you can buy it because they've set up everything else well enough, but they just kind of didn't. They kind of missed that little detail. But whatever, right? Like the rest of the episode's good enough that I could be like, oh, that's what they meant to do. That's fine.
Absolutely.
Like, I get it. That's fine. But Braxton explains that the issue was happening at a time. So they're trying to figure out when the saboteur put the temporal bomb on Voyager, and they had narrowed it down to a period 2 years prior to when Seven of Nine joined, which would have put him in season 2. Which is when they were being under attack by the Kazon. The Kmart Klingons aren't good enough to be Borg.
Dude, line of the show right there. The Kazon are an inferior species.
We've established that quite
deeply,
a bit. Yes.
Deeply entrenched Borg racism towards the Kazon.
The only 2 times that they have been mentioned since the Kazon have been on the show have been by 7F9 talking about how much they suck.
Mm-hmm. I want to go on record as saying, by the end, I think the Kazon actually had turned into a pretty legitimate Delta Quadrant species. And again, that's the ongoing shame of Voyager, is that all of the efforts to make cool new shit, they give up on right as it's becoming cool.
Let's talk about that for a second. There is a through line of Delta Quadrant races and antagonists that they had that they sort of captured, but never quite explicitly brought to the forefront. Then the Kazon kind of are a perfect manifestation of it, and that is that the Delta Quadrant is the Wild West, and it isn't that you've got some kind of sector spanning military force or a heavy major superpower in this part of space. It's not like there's a Dominion or a Federation or Romulan Empire or the Klingons. It's little fiefdoms, little principalities, and then this awful Borg threat that's lurking out there, sort of preying on the fact that there isn't organized resistance to them. And so you feel like you're in the dirty trailer trash part of the galaxy.
And really, the story they never tell, or the connection they never make, is that anything that would have been a credible threat to the Borg was already assimilated, and it's could be argued because the Borg is out there knocking around. Like, that's why the Delta Quadrant is such shambles, is that the best, the brightest, the most organized, whatever, has already been victimized, and now you've got the trash inheriting the quadrant. And you've got some...
Or they're just like already collapsed before the Borg got to them, like the Hirogen, or were never interested, like the Skevians, or so on and so forth, or just like are too busy being Captain Planet villains, like the Malon. Like,
get me mad again, Joe. Be careful.
So on and so forth. So, yeah, in retrospect, the Kazon were a really cool idea of, okay, so we want to make them somewhat Klingon-esque in that they're really, fighty focused, but we don't want to redo the Klingon. So instead of being, death metal warrior space samurai, they're essentially rednecks in space hoopties who are not like a threat in the same way and are kind of like dirty and awful and not at all like what we're used to, because this is a lawless part of space.
And then you bring in the trip. What really was good about the Kazon, and I don't know if it was intentional, but you didn't get the important part of their story up front. And it wasn't until Initiations where they really start fleshing out stuff with the Trabe and exploring that. You're like, okay, I get what these guys are about. I'm starting to feel it. And of course, again, by the time they discards Seska, they kind of close the book on them as well, and it's just wasted potential, which is the story of Voyager. But yeah, Seven lays down the law and says, no, the Kazon are stupid rednecks and they're incapable of planting time bombs on us. You must be mistaken.
So they correct to say we don't think the Kazon did it. We just think that whoever put it there took advantage of the chaos Voyager was suffering at the time to sneak onto the ship, put the time bomb on, and sneak off. They go through some training as Seven of Nine. She learns about different types of time paradoxes. One that specifically mentions first contact, i.e., the Borg go back in time to stop first contact, but end up, facilitating first contact. And they do a simulation of where the bomb is with Braxton, where his hatred of Janeway is expressed explicitly, so that the big reveal later when he's the villain is not really a reveal at all.
I'm still laughing that they're like, well, again, 7 of 9, you've got this ocular implant, which kind of helps out, and you know how the ship's laid out, and we think you'll be the least disruptive to the crew. And they beam her back in time again during the middle of this one of these Kazon battles, and it's like, yeah, because like the crazy hot blonde that nobody has ever seen before on the ship of 140 people, like that's not going to stick out like a sore thumb. There's some fun action in the hallways as Seven's kind of ducking and avoiding Janeway roaming around, and they'll play on that exact moment towards the end of the episode in kind of this Back to the Future 1, Back to the Future 2 50s rock concert where Janeway's trying to duck herself, which I thought was fun. And she ends up going back into the same Jeffries tube where she had been at earlier, because now the bomb is accessible. And we will end up with a situation where they detect the presence of some nonsense. Janeway picks up that .003 chromaton signature again, which is a throwback to when Voyager was in dry dock. They lock the whole area down with force fields, and she and Tuvok end up with 7 and 9 at gunpoint. Or like, all right, spill the beans.
Yeah, so she does. It was a better scene than I remembered. It's very well done, where she's trying not to explain who she is. She's trying not to break the Temporal Time Prime Directive. Janeway gives no fucks about nothing. No Prime directives will hold her back, and eventually makes 7 of 9 basically tell her otherwise. She wasn't going to let her out of the little cage that she put her in, and it's actually effectively done by Jerry Ryan in trying to explain, like, yeah, okay, I'm a Borg, and that's freaking you out right now, and I get it.
That was so good when they're like, "There's nanomachinery in her. She's a Borg," and Janeway looks like she just, she looks like she just hits someone with a car. Like, whoa, what, a Borg? What? Like, the preposterousness of 7 of 9 as a character, I think, really bleeds through in all the right ways here.
And then it pays off in a cool way. It pays off in a cool way because she's able to convince her by saying, when you take me from the Borg, this is a speech you're going to give me. And you can see her recognition and hearing her voice through her of like, yeah, that's some shit I would say. Like, you would have to know me to know that that's the shit I would say. I now believe that you say you're from the future.
And the whole time you've got Brax, and it's kind of like this FBI mafia mole listening on the wiretap thing, like, all right, don't tell him you're a cop, don't tell him you're a cop. And then back in the white unmarked van out in the street, like, yeah, I'm a cop. And it was like, ooh, like him wincing as she does all this stuff. Because at first she's like, keeping the party line going. He's like, yeah, good, you're doing a great job. Yeah, actually, I'm from the future. Wait, what? Ooh, no. So yeah, Janeway drops the fields and lets 7 of 9 go on the olive branch of trust, and 7 gets deeper in the ship, and we see, as you have already spoiled, that the bad guy is in fact a future version of Captain Braxton. How cool would it have been if at this moment when they reveal evil Braxton, if they actually had the original actor of Braxton?
Like, that's what they were saving him for?
bullshit timelines, whatever. Like, this guy is also Braxton, and he's got the real axe to grind, and then and that there's a split personality running here. But we find out beyond the shadow of a doubt that these clunky ass 29th century phasers are complete trash.
Yeah, so I don't know what happened between Future's End when it could vaporize a car
Yes.
and this episode where Seven of Nine stumbles in to the, as we alluded to in our intro, Seven of Nine stumbles in to the mess hall while the ping pong tournament is happening and manages to hit Braxton twice with the super future phaser, but it doesn't seem to do anything but mildly inconvenience him. Like, what, this literally incinerated a Ram truck. Like, it just vanished into the ether. Where's
Like, you
that
got to hold
energy?
get rid of 7 and 9. She doesn't know what she's doing. You need that corporate lackey from Future's End, Ed Bagley Jr.'s goon. That guy knew his way around a space phaser. I get that Bruce McGill isn't the most physical of guys, but when 7 of 9 with the best hand-eye coordination in the world takes her first shot, like, he just kind of moves his neck and like dodges the fire. It's there's some very top shelf unintentional physical humor in this episode. But yeah, man, she like bullseyes his ass twice, and as if the ping pong game could not have gotten any weirder. Like, this is the right way to like Star Trek one up yourself, from the ping pong ball being suspended in air to an alternate version of you minus your Borg implants and in a Starfleet uniform busting in and shooting at some other rando before collapsing over and dying again, and in her dying breath saying like, yeah, hunt this guy down before he plants a bomb. Like, this is some great escalation.
The after effect of all of this is that Seven of Nine cannot continue with her time cop oriented duties, and they need a new time cop. Of course, the only time cop that you can select in this situation is one Catherine Janeway. Nothing like Braxton's nemesis to be the one that get Braxton, right?
Well, you need a time cop, and if you were to pick Tuvok, you might unintentionally end up with a time detective, and
No one needs that. No one wants that.
I certainly don't.
Janeway's time in the time ship is my favorite part of the episode because she just is like, I just don't want to do this, right? Like, she just has that look on her face, and everything about her delivery of her dialogue from this point forward is like, I cannot wait to be out of this situation, right? Like, this is the bullshit I hate about being a space future person. Like, this is awful. And I was there for it. Like, it was the first time since, like, it's Janeway's supposed to hate time travel, like, even though she for the first season kept doing it. This is the first time where I actually buy the idea of like, oh, no time shit. I don't do time shit. No time shit for me. No, that's other. Find another captain. No, fuck this. So I like that energy she was giving off.
She's so flippant. She's so cheeky, and it would have been so easy for this to have spoiled or derailed the tone of the episode, but it all just works, and I'm there for it too. And you know, a lot of times Voyager will try to do fun and it just comes off as stupid. They really nail it here. You know, 7 and 9's kind of functioning as the straight man to the comedy that Janeway's bringing. There's this plot line where, so when they find out that Braxton's the bad guy, the commander like pulls a Minority Report and arrests Braxton for a pre-crime.
Yes.
And then they get one version of Braxton, but they have to go back and clean up more stuff. And he's like, well, for leniency, I'll just tell you the whole, you know, I'll give you the cheat codes to go back and get me because I stumble over one of your dead crew members. So you'll have an easy time apprehending me. So they get him locked up, but they're still not done yet because there's sloppy timeline antics, and they need Janeway to go back and actually clean things up in addition to apprehending Braxton. And you know, it's cool. There was one part I do want to shout out in the beginning, which with Admiral Patterson and Janeway inspecting the sick bay, and they do the initial activation of the EMH, which had some pretty good Bob Picardo moments in
Right.
that.
It's always
But
interesting to contrast the season 1 EMH mode versus current EMH mode, and you got to see that like basically right next to each other in the episode, so that was neat. Yeah, I really liked the ending where like after he's, I will say all of the kinetic moments in this episode are laughably bad. Right? Like that's the biggest meme here is that anything that involved physical contact or a fight of any kind is just done in the worst low energy way, from the like bursting in into the mess hall to like Janeway ultimately getting Braxton because he like tripped over a dude,
yes,
like to like when and they initially confront future Braxton in the Jeffries tube, and he's just like standing there with the thing, just they don't do anything and he just teleports away. Like everyone is just like very lazy in this episode when it comes to actual any kind of fighting.
yeah,
It's pretty funny. And there at the end as well, when everything's like wrapped up and Janeway's back on Relativity, and the commander's like, oh, the temporal incursion factor of like 0.0001 is better than I thought. And she's like, great. Like that's fine, I guess. I don't fucking know what you're talking about, dude. Like, can I go home? Are we done? Am I done being your time cop
hey,
now?
Space Boddicker, you want to go and see if that piece of hair in a jar is still there? Like, come on, man, just let me off the hook here.
And they explain like the reintegration in the timeline, but they don't explain. Kind of gives you that hint of like why things work the way they do. And he says, "Well, you never went to your future, so I don't have to erase your memory, but don't tell anybody about us. Bye."
Super sloppy, but I can live with it. The only real head scratcher here is again turning the blind eye to the Doctor's hollow emitter. Everything else is, fun and good. Great episode. And that's not something I don't know, maybe it is something we frequently say for time travel episodes, because I loved Timeless. I loved
Year of Hell. That was great.
Year of Hell, so there's certainly some great entries in there. Fun guest stars, great special effects work, and I can see why we had 2 boring ass duds before this. Someone to Watch Over Me, very budget friendly, and I think the other goddamn one, 11:59,
yeah.
was just filmed in the fucking back lot, so no real budget there. They do a lot of cool stuff here, but again, the standout moment is that Utopia Planitia shot, and knowing that that's like people putting in volunteer hours unpaid, really paid off well for audience enjoyment.
It's a fun episode, like it's a fun episode of Voyager that is still good Star Trek. And
Yep.
there's enough laughable things about it too to make it fun to rib on. Like it's got it all. It's got some comedy, it's got some deep Trek lore, and it's got some stupid Berman era bullshit all wrapped into one tasty package. Very good watch. Always enjoy this one. But what are we watching next week, Peter?
We are going into season 5, episode 26. No, 25. 20. Yeah, 25. Warhead. And we see what looks like the Doctor and Harry Kim. And in the far background, it almost looks like Tuvix, but we know that can't be it. An alien missile that possesses artificial intelligence begins to terrorize the Voyager crew. Didn't we already do this episode? Is this not
Juggernaut? Yeah.
Juggernaut?
Kind of, yeah.
What do you think the odds are that B'Elanna Torres is going to have some odd interaction with it, since she's like estranged robot mama number 1?
We'll find out together, sir.
All right, man.
Until then, see ya.